Hello once again everyone, this is Andrew Martin here and welcome to the BCM Game of the Month for April 2014. Now of course the chess scene during March was dominated by the Candidates tournament which took place in Khanty-Mansisyk, and quite rightly so. And this tournament ended in a spectacular and perhaps somewhat unexpected victory for Viswanathan Anand. I say unexpected not because Anand isn't one of the absolutely strongest players in the world. It's just that after his loss to Carlsen, one would have expected him to want to take a rest from the punishing level of top class chess. After all, he's achieved everything there is to achieve in the game. Why should he want to go on and achieve more? But the candidates showed that Anand was still full of fight and ambition, and in fact he won the tournament with relative ease. I'm going to focus on his round 9 game for my game of the month, where Anand's white against Anand-Topalov. And it's a game which to me proves that he actually had learned a lot from his match against Carlsen. Because as you'll see, from a certain point on in this game, Anand actually starts to play like Carlsen against Topalov, squeezing in a slightly better position where the opponent's really got no chance to win the game. And Topalov finds that most uncomfortable to have to deal with. Well, let's see what happened. Anand opened with e4 and Topalov responded with the Sicilian Najdorf. So no surprises for either player to date. And now Anand plays h3. A currently popular move. A move which was brought to most players' attention by Bobby Fischer. Fischer won a couple of nice games, which I think he annotated in my 60 memorable games using h3. It's just something different. To me, it indicates dissatisfaction with the main lines of the Najdorf more than anything else. It's just something to get the game a little bit off the beaten track. But of course h3 has decent ideas attached to it, because as indicated, white might want to play g4. And certainly against Topalov's Scandinavian setup, which he employs with e6, white goes g4, why not? And takes play back into the realm of the careless attack against the Scandinavian. But of course, in that variation, white might not have wanted to have played h3 so early. Knight fd7. That looks a little bit premature, but black's not hanging around to be attacked. He moves out of the way and says to white, well, what actually are you doing in this position? Anand's developing his bishop to g2. That's what. And black plays bishop e7. White goes bishop e3. All this has been seen plenty of times before. And black develops his knight to c6. So putting that knight on d7 from black's perspective is not a bad idea, because the knight can always redeploy itself to e5 at a moment's notice, which eyes c4. c4 is a bit of a crucial square for black here. If black can occupy that square at the right moment, he can get a very good game. Alternatively, the knight might come to c5. We don't know yet. And the most popular moves in this position from white's perspective have hitherto been either queen e2, which looks sensible because it prepares to castle and it covers c4, or queen to d2. The disadvantage of that is that black is actively encouraged to play knight c4, and I'm not so sure that's a good idea for white. Nevertheless, Anand played a less common move, but it looks very consistent with what he's doing here. He played h4. Now at first sight that looks impossible, because what's to stop black from taking it? Well, after that, white has a simple knight takes c6, and he not only regains his pawn on d6, he shatters the black pawn formation. So this really cannot be recommended to black. We just drop back to h4. Queen c7 was played in a 2013 game between Pryzant and Kokorev. After that, white played g5. Black put his knight on e5 and white went f4, actively encouraging black to put that knight on c4. And a very unclear position arose after b5, f5. White went on to win this game in 35 moves. But Topalov played knight de5. That looks very reasonable. White pushes on with g5. And black now plays bishop d7. So I think Topalov is trying to play this position in the most flexible way possible. He clearly could have put the knight on c4. And after bishop c1, let's say, castled. I mean, that looks reasonable for black. But I don't think Topalov wanted to commit himself at this point. That's absolutely evident from bishop d7. Black keeps options open with this move. In particular, he could, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility, castle long. So white takes on c6, which looks pretty, how can I put it, toothless. I think that's the best way to put it. But I think Anand has already elected to slow the pace of the game down and just take some of black's counterplay away at this point. And knight takes c6. Could Topalov have expected that move? I'm not sure. And then b3. This is a different way of playing the position. f4 can come later. And once again, white can play f4. But this doesn't really marry in with that capture on c6. And then in this position, I think queen b6 is just good for black. This is the type of thing white will want to avoid. Black must be better here, I'm sure. So b3 from Anand. And now Topalov played f5. I'm not sure about that move. I mean, I can see it's a move which goes for immediate gains. But I wonder whether it wouldn't have been better to play queen a5 in this position. And if white plays queen d2, now to castle. I mean, at some stage, black's got to commit himself. The move b3 doesn't look that great for white to me in a position like this. So this probably would have been a way to play for black. And black's position here looks decent. But Topalov goes f5. Anand goes f4. Now that the knight can't come to c4, he feels safer. Black puts his knight in on g4. And Anand surrenders the bishop. Queen to e2. Topalov takes it off. Queen takes. He takes on e4. White castles on the queen side. So we've got a rather unusual position here where black has got the bishop pair, but that bishop on e7 is being hemmed in by white pawns. It's funny, a bit later on that the white square bishop also becomes hemmed in by white pawns. But for the time being, black can't use his bishop pair. White's got much the freer game. He probably like to take that move b3 back. But white's got a slight advantage of this at this point, due to the easier nature of his position. He can take on e4 at a moment's notice. For instance, in the game, black played d5, white took on e4, and now black is struggling with his backward pawn on e6. Bishop a3 check. Black is trying to get some counterplay on the dark squares. And now queen to e7. Well, this was another position where black could easily have considered castling. It's hard to suggest why Topalov delayed castling for so long in this game. I mean, to me, this looks reasonable, but there's no doubt about white's advantage after knight c5. In view of the weakness at e6, black's probably got to take that. We recapture. And if black takes on f4, then bishop h3. White's piling up on e6 with everything he's got, and I don't think black can avoid an inferior endgame here. For instance, if he goes rook e4, we take. Black recaptures, we take on d7, take on e4, and this is pretty unpleasant for black. One weak pawn. Oh, he's not lost, but against somebody like Anand, you know, you would be very afraid of getting ground down in a position like this. So Topalov plays queen e7. White goes knight f2. That knight could easily be redeploying itself to d3 at a moment's notice. So that's why black plays bishop c5 now. And black's obviously afraid of this redeployment to d3 because he lops off the knight. Now if black had castled, this is another instance when black could have chosen castles here. Then knight d3 and rook he1. This starts to look very nice for white. Despite black's premier bishop on d4, it's not really doing very much. The most important feature of this position, of course, is the backward e-pawn. So Topalov hastens to take off the knight. White recaptures, and finally black gets to castle. But he's reached a position now where white can start to squeeze him by piling up on e6. Of course, what black's hoping is he gets counter pressure against f4. But Anand confidently defends himself. Black plays queen d6, and once again a very confident move by Anand now, just offering the exchange of rooks. All the rooks, in fact, as after rook takes e5, f takes e5, takes, queen e7. We now reach the position I was describing earlier, where white's got this advantage, and black can't really win if white plays even half decently here. It's going to be a very unpleasant day at the office for Topalov from this position. So Anand plays a4, and that attempts to restrict the activity of black's bishop. I think, though, a definite alternative here was bishop h3. That's a good move because it anticipates black's manoeuvre with his bishop that he manages to play in the game, because after bishop e8 we're going to go queen b6, and this is awkward for black. He's driven very passive, having to defend e6. The point of a4 is to prepare all that, but Topalov now manages to redeploy his bishop to g6, and he should be able to hold this position, but it's not at all easy, as you'll see. So white plays bishop h3, and now what I think black should do is basically to try to create some sort of fortress here with bishop e4. I think that's the best chance, to do absolutely nothing and try and hang on. Just put your king on f7, queen b6, king f7, and try and hang on. It's not very pleasant, but it avoids the difficulties of the game as Topalov loses patience. He doesn't like his position, he doesn't like what is going to happen to him, and he plays h6. This could almost be described as a losing move, because it creates new weaknesses in black's camp. Whereas before he's just defending e6 and he's generally passive, now, after takes, he's got other weaknesses to nurse. White played queen g4, pinning the bishop, hitting e6. Black defends himself, and now white presses ahead. After bishop e4, white cramped black's queenside pawns. A very good move. And black played bishop h7. Now white goes c3. Just again, taking squares away from black, preparing b4, setting up a favourable pawn chain. And after bishop e4, Anand decided to change the nature of the game by playing c4. This has the effect of tying down black's bishop to an extent. Topalov is anxious to shake off the pressure, and he plays bishop f5. Queen f4, and now d takes c4. But the problems now begin to escalate as Anand takes on f5. He takes on f5 again with check, and now after king e8 comes more or less the winning move here, queen c8 check. The problem for black clearly is that white is going to take on c4 with check. So that's exactly what happens, king g7, and white now plays queen to d5. And can we say that this queen ending is winning? Well, I think we probably can. And it's winning not only because white has got an extra pawn, but because the black king is more exposed than white's king. White can slowly make progress, edge up the board, whereas black can do absolutely nothing here. He can't even find a safe haven for his king. So although it takes some time, in queen endings you've got to be careful all the time the opponent doesn't land some unpleasant checks, perpetual checks and all that sort of thing. But still, I just don't see how black is intending to defend this position. So king e8 was answered by b4, and black played queen to c7 check. Well, the queen can't leave home here. If queen g5, trying to get some counterplay, then I think we go queen e6 check, and after king f8, I think the easiest way is just queen c8 check. And you see we pick off the pawn on b7 with check. Queen to c7 check. Okay, well that doesn't really help black's position much. The white king comes to d4. Black's got to stick around there. Queen e7. Very, very unpleasant stuff. And after king d7, Anand now plays an excellent move. King to d5. closing in on the black king. Really unpleasant. Black played king to c7. White went queen to g6. Black went queen to h4. Queen d6 check. King c8. And white goes king to c5. Throughout this ending, black is hampered by the fact that his king is very exposed. In queen endings, often the best way, if you could do it, is to bring your king, if you're the person with the material advantage, towards the enemy king, so that you can land a reciprocal check at the right moment. And we'll see exactly what I mean, as after queen f7, white went queen c4, black went queen g7, and now the king came into b6. White fears nothing, as his queen is in full control of the position, and black still can't do anything. The eventual upshot of all these improvements in white's position must be, of course, the advance of the e-pawn. And that's exactly what happens over the next couple of moves. White goes queen d6 check, king c8, and now e6. In the end, Topalov is squeezed out of the game. Black resigns, as after queen f2 check, white has queen c5 check, winning straight away. So a very nice technical performance in the end by Anand, and very much a game which for the last 20-30 moves could easily have been identified as a Magnus Carlsen game. So who's to say that Anand can't beat Carlsen in the rematch? We're looking forward to later in the year, because if Anand plays in the same form that he did in Khanty-Mansisyk, he's got a really good shot of winning the match.